So good morning. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this morning for the Low Carbon Fuel Standard Reporting webinar. My name is Greg Mayer. I'm the chief of the Low Carbon Fuel Standard Program. Staff have worked really hard over the last couple of weeks putting together this presentation to review the dates and deadlines for reporting this year, as well as how to submit reports. There'll be some time at the end to go over some questions that you may have. I'll start with the first question that everyone's probably wondering about. What does the OAL disapproval do to the effective date of the regulatory amendments? So our answer is we don't have a target effective date as of yet. We are reviewing the OAL decision and preparing to release modifications for public comment prior to resubmittal to the Office of Administrative Law. The effective date depends on how quickly we can get those revisions out, how quickly OAL can review those revisions and hopefully approve them. So for now, we'll just continue to operate under the July 2020 version of the regulation for reporting, verification, and any other tasks that you guys need to do over the next couple months. So I'll pass it off to Staff Air Pollution Specialist Anil Baral to kick off the webinar. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Greg. Good morning, everyone. My name is Anil Baral. I'm a lead staff in the Fuels Evaluation section of the Transportation Fuels branch. This presentation today will focus on the LCFS reports due in 2025, as well as how reporters should prepare for and what they should expect of the verification process. Before I start with the actual presentation, some housekeeping items I would like to highlight. This meeting will be recorded and the recording will be made available on our website. All external participants will be muted. However, we'll offer opportunities during the course of presentation to permit participants to pose questions. If there are additional questions after the presentation, please email us at the address provided in this slide deck, and we'll respond at the earliest. And we have a hard stop at 11:30 a.m. PS Pacific Standard Time for these presentations. With that said, I will move to the presentation with the outline first. In this webinar, we will cover the following topics: an overview that includes a recap of 2023 annual reporting and report submission and verification deadlines, reporting 2024 annual fuel pathway reports, we call AFPRs in acronym, quarterly fuel transaction reports, QFTR submissions, project report submissions, annual compliance report submissions, submission of marketable crude oil name, MCON, low complexity, low energy use, or project report for verification, projects reports and MCON verification, and implementation of 2024 amendments. Next slide, please. This slide shows highlights from 2023 annual reporting and verification. In total, 530 annual reports were submitted, which included annual fuel pathway reports, QFTRs, project reports, and MCON reports. CARB received verification statements which are positive, qualified positive, or adverse statements for 499 reports by the verification deadline. Reporting entities chose to defer verification of 24 reports. Staff working with the verification bodies and reporting parties to reach resolution on the remaining 7 reports after the verification deadline. Next slide, please. Non-compliance with the LCFS regulation can lead to enforcement actions. Things that can help with compliance are to report and verify early, and have open communication with the verifier and CARB staff regarding any issues. Some examples of non-compliance that may lead to enforcement action are reporting incorrect data, failure to fix correctable errors, late reports or failure to report, late verification or failure to verify, and the verified operation CI exceeding the certified CI. If you want to learn about the completed enforcement actions related to reporting, please visit the CARB's LCFS enforcement website. Next slide, please. Depending on the report and project types, various entities are responsible for submitting annual reports. For annual field pathway reports, reporting entities include field pathway holders and joint applicants. For more details, please see LCFS Guidance 22-01. For quarterly fuel transaction reports and annual compliance reports, reporting entities include reporting parties in LRT, even if there are no transactions. For project reports, reporting entities include project operators and joint applicants such as petroleum refiners. Likewise, eligible petroleum refinery operators are required to report low complexity, low energy use reports. And lastly, producers of carburetor, gasoline, and diesel supplying to California are also required to report MCON reports. Next slide, please. This table provides an overview of the deadlines for submitting various steps of annual reports and completing verification. Primary applicants will submit their annual field pathway report using the annual field pathway report tab in the alternative fuel portal. Joint applicants will submit their annual field pathway report by the correspondence tab in AFP. Other reporting entities will submit the reports using the LCFS reporting tool. More detail will be provided for all report types later in this webinar. Next slide, please. This table provides an overview of the deadlines for submitting quarterly project reports for the quarters in 2025 and completing verification. Entities that do not meet the 45-day deadline may be subject to enforcement action. Next slide, please. Reporting tips. So here are some useful reporting tips. Please review the LCFS regulation for applicable reporting requirements before report submission. CARB staff has posted an AFP user guide and reporting related guidance documents on the LCFS website. The links are listed on this slide. Reporting entities may refer to these documents in preparation for submitting annual reports. More importantly, entities can contact CARB staff at LCFS annual report at arb.ca.gov for questions related to annual reports. Reporting entities will want to save any correspondence with CARB and provide it to the verifier as part of the GHG monitoring plan. More information and guidance will be provided on the transition to the 2025 version of the regulation later. Next slide, please. Verification essentials. Be prepared to trace data to its origin. Verifiers will request to observe your data management systems and view any supporting documentation for calculator inputs. Be prepared to trace specified source feedstocks to their point of origin, including providing point of origin contact information for the verifiers. If you are not in direct contact with the point of origin, you must work with your suppliers to allow verifiers to get in contact. Please ensure the monitoring plan meets the requirements of section 95491.1c. Note that correctable errors must be fixed. If not, the verifier must submit an adverse verification statement. If the verifier or reporter is unsure of the requirements, please contact CAR for assistance. Next slide, please. Here are some verification best practices. Find out if you are required to opt-in verification. If you have deferred the last 2 verifications, you are required to verify all 3 years. If you defer last year but are not eligible to defer this year, you are required to verify both years. If you are unsure, please reach out to CARB. Start early and finish early to assure meeting deadlines, and late verifications are not accepted. Next slide, please. So continuing on verification best practices, streamlining verification. Execute verifier contract as soon as possible, even prior to report submission. Associate your verifier with your report in the online tool. If you are deferring, select defer verification. It is good practice to have a webinar with your verifier prior to any required site visit. Please in advance prepare in advance for verifier questions and data documentation request. Open and prompt communication will facilitate resolution of any issues. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to go over annual field pathway report submission. Instruction on submitting your QFTR can also be found in section 4.1 of the LRT CBTS user guide found on the LCFS guidance documents page of our website. Next slide, please. First, you need to go to LRT CBTS and AFP login page and enter login credentials. Next slide, please. You will land on this screen. To create an annual field pathway report, navigate to the annual field pathway report tab highlighted in the slide and click it. Next slide, please. This window appears, then click on create AFP report. Next slide, please. If you are creating a report for tier 1 or tier 2 pathway, you need to select your verification body from the drop-down menu. Lookup table pathways do not require VB selection. Click on Begin AFP Report tab to go to Annual Field Pathway Report page. Next slide, please. If the reporting party is eligible to defer verification, they can choose to verify or to defer. If they choose to defer verification of an annual field pathway report or a quarterly field transaction report, the reporting entity may select defer verification from the drop-down menu. Next slide, please. From the annual field pathway report window, select reporting year, which is 2024. Then select application number from the drop-down menu. Relevant application numbers for each field pathway applicant are pre-populated. A drop-down menu populates with all application numbers that require an annual field pathway report. You need to create one report for each application. Next slide, please. To complete annual field pathway report submission, you need to upload required documents by selecting Add File to the right of the annual field pathway report documents. Tier 1 and Tier 2 pathways require pathway calculator, such as Simplified CI calculator or California GITS 3.0 calculator. Lookup table pathways require supplemental documents. Enter the operation CI for the Tier 1 and Tier 2 pathways by selecting Add Operation CI to the right of the annual field pathway report operation CI and attest to the report accuracy by selecting the checkbox. Next slide, please. How to upload documents, required documents. Click on choose files. Primary applicants are required to upload tier 1, tier 2 calculators and supporting documents. The Excel CI summary sheet can also be uploaded as a supporting document. The applicant will also upload other supplemental documents if required by operating conditions. For lookup table pathways requiring annual field pathway report submission, primary applicants will need to upload supplemental documents as listed in the AFP user guide. An error message appears if the applicant tries to submit a report without uploading the documents. Next slide, please. Click on Operational CI to enter the Operational CI. Click on the Operational CI to enter the Operational CI from the updated Tier 1 or Tier 2 calculator for each pathway, which is required for each of the facilities certified field pathways if there is field production. An error message appears if the applicant doesn't enter required operational CI for each field pathway. If there is no field production during the entire 24 months of reported data in AFPRs, please check the no field production report box. The margin of safety will now be collected in the AFP. Field pathway holders should request a margin of safety by entering a value in the margin of safety value field. The field will accept up to 2 decimal places. The margin of safety value will be added to the verified operational CI after verification is complete. If no field production to report is selected, the margin of safety value will be added to the previously certified CI. Margin of safety value is a required field, so enter 0 if no margin of safety is requested. Staff recommend a margin of safety to avoid enforcement action for accidents of the certified CI. For this year, if an entity wishes to change their margin of safety after completion of verification, use the pathway action form, also known as a digital form, which is linked in the LCFS guidance 22-02 to submit a margin of safety request. Next slide, please. The next step is to attest to the reporter's accuracy by selecting the checkbox. You will check the attestation box. An error message appears if you try to submit without attesting to the report's accuracy. Next slide, please. Finally, you will click on the submit button to submit the report. This action will send the report to CAR and the verification bodies simultaneously. Next slide, please. The verification body can return the report back to the primary applicant if there are issues. Primary applicants can revise the calculator and re-upload it and any supporting documents by clicking on Add File. Primary applicants must update the operational CI if any data in the calculator changes that would impact the operational CI. After entering the relevant information, the applicant will check the box for attestation. Next slide, please. When you click on the submit button, the report is immediately routed to the verification body and the California Air Resources Board. Next slide, please. Now we talk about joint applicant submission. Joint applicants are required to undergo annual verification. Joint applicants provide site-specific data or emission factor to complete lifecycle GHG emissions of a fuel pathway. Some examples of joint applicants include eco tallow renderers providing rendering emission factors, LNG producer providing LNG production data, and RNG producer supplying biomethane to hydrogen production via book and claim. A joint applicant submits a report through AFP correspondence, which includes operational data and calculators for emission factors. The joint applicant should include the application number of the primary applicant and provide information about the type of information provided for verification in the comment box when submitting reports through AFP correspondence. Note that joint applicants will submit the same documents directly to the BV for verification. Next slide, please. There are instances when a field pathway holder can be a joint applicant to a different field pathway under the control of a different field pathway holder. An example of this is a field pathway holder of a biomethane pathway becoming a joint applicant to a hydrogen pathway via book and claim. In such a case, submission of an annual field pathway report as joint applicant is still required, even if you are also submitting an AFPR as a primary applicant. However, in such a case, separate verification is not required, as this is already covered by verification of the annual field pathway report as primary applicant for a biomethane pathway. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to go over some of the lessons learned during these verification years. In processing annual field pathway reports, staff have observed some issues that are worth mentioning here for the benefits of reporting entities so that these issues can be avoided in the future. Some field pathway holders of biomethane pathways that are also joint applicants with hydrogen pathways have not been submitting joint applicant reports as required. Some field pathway holders of application involving multiple pathways are misreporting operational CIs, that is, reporting operational CIs with incorrect pathway codes. Therefore, please double check all the pathway FPC and CI combination. Some field pathway holders who make corrections to the calculators at the request of verifier are forgetting to update the annual field pathway report operational CI when they resubmit their reports. Now, I would like to hand over the presentation to my colleague, Scott. Scott, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil. Good morning. I am Scott Vazalo, and I'll be presenting the QFTR and annual compliance report submission sections. Reporting entities are required to report transactions for credit and deficit generation every quarter. Instructions on submitting your QFTR can also be found in section 4.1 of the LRT CBTS user guide, found on the LCFS guidance document page of our website. This slide shows the quarterly QFTR deadlines. These deadlines can also be found on the reporting, verification, and annual compliance calendar or the LRT login homepage. We're currently in the fourth quarter of 2024 reporting period, and the QFTR submission deadline is April 1st, 2025. On this slide is the note of the 45-day upload deadline. Please ensure your transactions are in the LRT by this deadline. Prior to the reporting deadline, fuel reporting entities can use the reconciliation tools provided in the LRT CBTS in conjunction with business partners to complete any necessary reporting corrections. To begin your QFTR submission, go to the LRT portal and log in. Select the LCFS Reports tab at the top. Select the reporting period range and then select the Go button. Select Begin Report for the quarter you have chosen. Once logged in, users can see reporting templates on the LRT homepage. Users can upload their transactions using the template or add the transactions manually. Upload supporting documents as necessary. This may include Regis Rec reports, MCON reports, or natural gas total throughput. Select the Back to Reports home button when you are done. Select the Submit button next to the QFTR. The system will give you an error message if you try to submit the QFTR before the 45-day data upload period ends for that quarter. Review your QFTR for accuracy and then select the Submit Quarterly Report button. The system will display confirmation that the QFTR was successfully submitted. The 2024 Annual Compliance Report can be submitted after the Q4 2024 quarter closes. Instructions on submitting your Annual Compliance Report can also be found in Section 4.2 of the LRT CBTS User Guide found on the LCFS Guidance Document page of our website. To begin submitting your Annual Compliance Report, log into your LRT account. Select the LCFS Reports tab. Select the View Annual Reports button. In order of oldest to newest, go to the annual report that is not submitted. Note that previously submitted annual reports may be reopened if QFTR corrections or credit adjustments are made afterwards. Review your annual compliance report for accuracy. Confirm the accuracy of the report by selecting the checkbox. Next, select the Submit Annual Report button, and the system will display confirmation that the annual compliance report was submitted. If applicable, repeat the steps for the next compliance year. Note that the ledger may now display credits or deficits have rolled over to the next compliance year. Thank you. I will now be passing things off to my colleague, Marianne.
Good morning, all. Hope you all enjoyed the webinar till now. I'm Maya Mustavar. I'm an Air Resources Engineer and part of a field project evaluation section. So part of our section are working on project report and LCLEU report submission, also QFTR and MCON report for verification. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as you can see here, the following project report type must be submitted by project operators and joint applicants and be verified. The project types includes refinery investment projects, innovative crude projects, renewable hydrogen refinery projects, LCLEU or low complexity, low energy use projects, and direct air capture or DAC projects. Entities submitting project reports may elect to conduct verification and credit generation quarterly or annually. Entities must determine before the initial verification of a project report whether to conduct quarterly or annual verification. If an entity elects to conduct quarterly verification, it may only switch to annual verification at the beginning of a calendar year. Next slide, please. The reporting entity must submit primary data, documentation, attestation, and credit calculations as required in the CARB staff summary of the initial approval. And the project reports are submitted via LRT CBT verification. Reports are submitted directly to CARB and the contracted VB. A reporting entity that elects quarterly verification and credit generation doesn't need to submit an annual project report. Instead, the reporting and verification deadlines specified in Section D of the LRT verification user guide document must be followed. So it's one of the most important references. It should be noted that submission of the project reports, either annual or quarterly, is no longer done through the LRT correspondence for 2023 compliance year and beyond. A reporting entity must use the LRT verification tab instead to submit the project report directly to CARB and the contracted VB. Next slide, please. So first, let's start from the beginning. Log into the LRT tab, as you can see in the picture. Next slide, please. Then select the verification tab from the upper bar menu, as you can see. Next slide. Next, select Create Report to begin annual transaction summary report process. If you don't see the Create Report link, you are not eligible for verification of annual transactions. For any questions about transactions subject to verification, please email LCFS verify@arb.ca.gov. Next slide. Then a prompt window, add report subject to verification, will appear, as you can see here. You should select applicable report type from the report type drop-down menu and then reporting year. Then select the contracted VB from the verification body name drop-down menu. After selecting the report type and VB name, click on Begin Report to add the annual transaction summary report, MCON report, LCLEU report, or project report to verify report homepage. Next slide, please. Here you can see your options for the type of reports, including MCON report, LCLEU report, or project reports. Next slide. When you are at the Verify Report homepage, these are required prior to submission. For QFTR or MCON report, as you can see in letter A, download and review the system-generated annual transaction summary report or MCON report. For LCLEU or project report, as you can see in letter B, upload report by selecting Add File. You can also upload supplemental documents if necessary. Select Add File to upload additional supporting documents. And letter C shows the attest. It shows the need for attest to the report's accuracy by selecting the checkbox by attestation statement. Comments for the VB may also be entered. I should mention here that please choose a relevant name if you have more than one project. For example, if you have both RICP and innovative product projects. Next slide, please. To upload supplemental documents, after selecting the Add File link, the Upload Document window will appear. Select the Supplement Document option from the File or Document type drop-down menu. Then click Choose File and add any additional supporting file or document to submission package. All uploaded documents will show up at the table in the upload screen. Next slide, please. Click Submit on the Verify Report homepage to complete the project report submission and route to the elected VB. As you can see here, if the entity tries to submit without attesting to the report accuracy, an error message will appear. Otherwise, the LRT verification system will generate an email to confirm project report submission and notify the selected VB that the report is ready for verification. Next slide, please. The Verify report homepage will display status of verification report submission. Successful submission will show ready for verification status, as you can see here, or the report subject to verification. The submission status will change depending on the verification progress made by the elected VB. You can also check the instructions at the homepage for more detail. Next slide, please. MCON must be submitted with the annual compliance report. If a reporting entity is responsible for the compliance of multiple refineries, each refinery must be separately reported in the MCON pursuant to Section 95491D1A4. Verification analysis of the crude volumes must be performed for each crude supplied to each refinery by its crude identifier, pursuant to Section 95491D1A4. And this verification analysis can't be replaced by the aggregated assessment of total crude volume. And it's something that we really encourage to practice. Next slide, please. Here you can see references for reporting entities and verification bodies to submit the reports. The first reference that we recommend is LCFS 2201 guidance document, annual report guidance, that you can see the most updated version in our website right now. And for the reporting party, reporting project would follow Section D of the LRT verification user guide, and the VB would follow Section O to Section Q of the verification online tool user guide. All of these guidance documents can be found in our website. So in summary, the reporting project would go to the verification tab, click and create report, select the appropriate options, year, report type, and VB, attach the appropriate files to the report, submit to their VB, and VB would download the files and review, request revisions if necessary, and then attach the verification statement to verification report before submitting to CARB. When report corrections are required during verification, LCFS entities and VBs must ensure that the final corrected report has been submitted to CARB and that verification services were completed on the final corrected version of the report. Next slide, please. As you can see here, for password reset, use the reset password feature found on the LRT login screen. Please contact lrtadmin@arb.ca.gov if you have issues resetting your password. And triple login attempts locks user profiles. They'll need to contact CARB to unlock. Actually, you'll need to contact CARB to unlock your account. Next slide, please. As most of you probably know, the Office of Administrative Law sent back the proposed 2024 LCFS amendments package with a request for edits, which staff will address through a 15-day change. In the meantime, all activities will continue under the 2020 version of the regulation until the 2024 amendments take effect, including reporting, validation, verification, and field pathway applications. Further guidance will be provided when more about the effective date of the amendment regulation is known. Yeah, so I pass it off to Katrina for for the questions. Thank you all for listening.
Hi, everyone. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so here is the process that we are going to do for the question and answer session. Questions will be taken virtually through this platform, Zoom, and each person can ask a question. To do so, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature here in Zoom. You'll see it there at the bottom. It says raise hand. That will signal to us that you'd like to ask a question. If you have more than one question, please raise your hand again after your first question is asked. Zoom participants may dial #2 to raise your hand as well. Staff will inform Zoom phone participants when they are unmuted to ask a question. And you can dial *6 to mute or unmute. We'll make every effort to call on all the attendees in the order they raise their hand. So I see here that we have 3 so far, so we'll get started. Dan Willis, I have activated your microphone. Please unmute yourself and feel free to ask your question.
Hey there, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Yeah, my name's Dan. I work for the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. We're a fuel provider providing zero CI electricity to a few customers who are San Francisco city agencies. I was curious, I know that the OAL has issued that disapproval, which puts things a bit up in the air, but I'm curious for entities who will be newly subject to the verification requirements for quarterly fuel transaction reports for electricity transactions, assuming that those amendments are passed. I believe that's 2026 data that needs to be verified in 2027 is the first year of that new requirement. Can staff provide any guidance as to like best practices for when verification bodies should be contracted by entities who need them? I guess I'm if it's like necessary to have the verification bodies working during the year of interest of data that's being looked at, or if they should begin working, just in the months leading up to when the verification reports are due, that kind of thing. Thanks.
So I'll take this question. So you can either verify quarterly or annually. If you're planning on verifying annually, the verifier only needs to be contracted prior to annual verification deadline. So that would be August 31st of 2027. Sorry, I believe that's right. And we do recommend that you start contracting with them earlier in the year while you're working on submitting your report or prior to submitting your report. If you're planning on doing quarterly, it would be best to have them contracted as you submit or prior to you submit your quarterly report so that they can review those and submit the verification statement with those. Hopefully that answers your question. And our verification team is conducting trainings for the verifiers, and they will be providing training to the verifiers on how to verify these electricity transactions.
That does help. Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, great.
Okay, next we have Colleen Campbell. Colleen, I have activated your microphone. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for this information today. I work for the Valley Transportation Authority in Santa Clara County, and I'm just looking to utilize your tool to upload fuel pathway transactions for our quarterly reports. We'd like to make that process easier than entering the transactions one by one. And I know you have a report that we can upload in order to do that, but it's not very intuitive. So I'm just wondering if I can get help with how to use that and use the tool to upload those transactions.
Hi, Colleen. I can go ahead and reach out to you. You said you are with the
The
Valley
Valley Transportation Authority?
Authority. Okay, and then I assume that you are a user on the LRT, so I'll look up your email and I'll reach out to you.
Thank you, Scott.
No
Appreciate it.
problem.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next we have John Sens. John, I have activated your microphone. Please feel free to ask your question.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. So yeah, John Sands with Chevron Renewable Energy Group. I heard you mention, I think Anil, that we were going to use the 2020 guidelines for reporting. Just wanted to confirm that or know if staff was going to put out official confirmation to use the 3.0 model rather than the 4.0 model. It'd be great to know if there's anything else we should expect for that before the end of the month.
So everything's going to be the 2020 version of the regulation, which includes the 3.0 model, the tier 1 and tier 2 calculators based off the model. We have provided guidance on the OAL disapproval that I believe says to use the 3.0. And I think we also have a web page. I can't remember if we posted that. I'll have to circle back to check. That indicates that we will also be using the 3.0 guidance or 3.0 version of GREET as well as the tier 1 and tier 2 calculators.
Is that OAL guidance on like the whatever it's called, the resources page with the different guidances, or is that somewhere else?
Let me see. I had it up a second ago. So we have a market notice that links off of the regulatory web page.
Okay.
So if you go to OAL regulation, there'll be a final approval OAL action and then OAL notice. So you can see all of that as well as the market notice, which explains a little bit more. And I think we were looking at putting something more on our webpage, and I'll have to make sure that's more visible.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll look for that. Appreciate it.
All right. We will now move to Hannah Luzzi. Hannah, I have activated your microphone. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you so much. Hannah Losi with Tricord Consulting. My question is, if the verifier requests that a fuel pathway holder upload a new version of the tier 1 coming out of verification, will the fuel pathway holder at that point have the opportunity to also update their margin of safety, or is that the only way to update that after submitting the initial AFPR by the end of this month is the only way to update that number via correspondence with CARB?
I'll try this one, but I'll make sure Scott can jump in if I'm incorrect. You should be able to update any values on a page once the verifier has returned it for revisions. So you can update that margin of safety then. If that is incorrect, Scott, do you know if there's a reason they wouldn't be able to do that? Okay.
I don't know.
So Layla said that is correct. So Lila said that's correct, and she is our tool expert. So you can update it at any time. It is open for revisions.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I see one more hand raised. So if anyone else wants to ask a question, now would be the time to do so, but we'll go to Mark Ventura. Mark, I have activated your microphone. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, good morning. Mark Ventura with Phillips 66. A question on the amended standards when there will be in effect. So at this point, is it pretty much a done deal that the Q1 report will be in a compliance based on the 2020 CI standards? And if that's the case, does CARB envision to have different CI standards throughout the year 2025? Or would the new standard only start applying in 2026 at this point?
So I would say it is not a done deal about Q1 reporting, because Q1 reporting ends June 30th, I believe. So there is a potential the reg could be in effect in time for that to affect Q1 reporting. Again, we don't know. It depends on how long it takes us to do the revisions, how long it takes OAL to review the revisions. As far as the CI, are you talking like the certified CI, like at the end of a reporting period after verification is complete, we apply the margin of safety to the verified operational CI to get the new certified CI, which will apply for the following year? So I don't know, maybe I'm not understanding the question.
I was asking, so is, for instance, the OAL, I guess, so it sounds like the OAL would have to approve by June 30th for you to consider that Q1 would be under the 2020 standard regulation. But say, for instance, if OAL certifies the regulation on July 1st or after July 1st,
Yeah.
you would have then standard for the Q1 under the 2020 regulation. Would you then apply the 2020 regulation throughout the year 2025? Or would you have a hybrid compliance with CI standard, kind of lower CI standard for Q1, and then maybe higher CI standard for Q2 and beyond?
Okay, so you're talking about the baseline value, correct? The
I'm
baseline.
talking, read the CI standard, the benchmarks.
Oh, the benchmark. Okay, yes. Okay, so that is something that we'll have to discuss with our legal team depending upon the effective date of the regulation. So if it is in effect prior to June 30th, it is likely that we could apply the benchmark back to Q1. If it is in effect after June 30th, we'll have to figure out when that new benchmark would apply, whether it would be hybrid throughout the year, or we would continue to apply the 2020 benchmark. So as we come closer to knowing the effective date, we'll work with our legal team and put out guidance for that. But unfortunately, that's all I know at this time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have two more hands raised. Oh, three more hands raised. So we'll start with Christian Zackham. Christian, I have unmuted your microphone. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. My name is Christian. I work for Novia RNG, a biogas producer, and we're going through the process of submitting our pathway applications, our provisional pathway applications for some sites, and we're using GREET 3.0. I'm just wondering if you have any kind of sort of tips in this transitionary period where we're kind of, waiting for further guidance, operating under GREET 3.0, if there's any sort of like advice you'd have for an applicant in this position.
So our recommendation is to continue to submit applications under the GREET 3.0. We're working with our legal team to understand the best way to implement the new regulation when it comes into effect, whether we can continue to review those applications or whether we need to have them resubmitted as 4.0. Ideally, we'll have applications submitted in the near future reviewed before the effective date of the regulation, depending on when that may be. But for now, we can't accept submissions under the 4.0.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next we have Jeffrey Rosenfield. Jeffrey, I have activated your microphone. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Great, thank you so much. This is Jeff Rosenfeld with Brightmark, an RNG producer. I wanted to confirm that for the margin of safety request at the point of submission, that we are able to, if we do submit one at that point, are able to modify that margin of safety after the verification or at the end of verification.
So you can modify it throughout the verification process when the verifier returns your report for corrections. Once verification is complete, you'll have to use the digital form to change the margin of safety. So ideally, when the verifier returns it for like the last round of changes, hopefully you'll know what the operational CI is, and you'll be able to decide what your margin of safety will be based on that, and then submit it. Like I said, once the verifier submits their verification statement saying it's qualified positive or positive, that locks that tool so we cannot change it. Then you'll have to use the digital form, like if you want to do it in October or November or something like that, you use the digital form.
Great, and I guess that not directly related to this, but moving into next year and future years, are we able to modify our margin of safety for a CI we are using at that point, not a CI, not necessarily in this case where it's a CI being used in the next year, as we are tracking our credit generation, seeing movement of our CI, especially for RNG pathways? Are we able to submit a request and modify the CI that's being used in that actual credit generating year?
So you're saying once you have a certified CI at the end of 2025 to use in 2026, somewhere during 2026, you decide that CI is not where we want to be, you want to change it?
Correct.
I do not believe there's a mechanism to do that, but I will have to check with staff. Yeah. Okay, I took a note on that. I'll check with staff and we will get back to you on that. So one of the things that we had hoped with the new version of the reg, I understand it's not in effect and it's difficult because we can't presuppose OAL action, but the idea was that with the margin of safety, you can recoup those credits in the future rather than going into the buffer pool. So hopefully, once the new reg is into effect, that won't be as big of an issue as it is currently, where you can't recoup those credits. So we will all have to talk with staff and legal and figure out if there's a way to do that. Thank you for the question.
Great, thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. Natalia Galvez, I have activated your microphone. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Sure, thank you. My name is Natalia Galvez. Work for Air Liquide, hydrogen producer. This is a quick question. Just want to make sure I have my understanding that every 6 years is the limit for us to use the same continuous verification company. I want to make sure if this is still the case. I'm a little bit new with the process, so I want to understand that.
Yeah, that is correct. If you can use the same verifier for 6 years, then you have to rotate away from them. For 3 years, then you can come back to the original verifier.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 more hands raised. We'll move to Joseph Steer. I have activated your microphone, Joseph. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
I apologize. I kind of got in this meeting a little late, so I apologize if this question's already happened. But due to the recent actions by OEL, is this gonna push back the deadlines for everything 1 year, starting with like CI implement? Are we gonna be using still the old CI for 2025 reporting, as well as anything else that was due to start this year? Is that going to get pushed back to 2026, and then so on for things in 2026? Is that going to get pushed back to 2027, or are we still in line to meet the current year timelines as put in the proposed regulation?
So if you're referring to the CI benchmark, there's a potential that that still can be used for Q1 reporting based on an effective date prior to June 30th. So we don't have an answer for that. We don't think anything else is going to be pushed back, but we are in the process of reviewing the OAL comments and determining what changes we need to make to the regulation. I mean, for those of you who have had a chance to review the comments, a lot of them were procedural. They didn't like the word may and they want the word shall or must. So a lot of that won't affect any deadlines or anything, but during the process of reviewing, we'll see if any of the deadlines we identified in the reg could potentially be affected by an effective date beyond like sort of in the mid-year this year. So watch our websites for any updates on that, and we will post them.
I guess I could ask a question about when we could expect public comment. I mean, when we might see revised regulations, but if you don't know yet, I understand.
So we're working internally to revise the regulations per the OAL request. So we will have to release those for public 15-day comment. We don't have a date identified yet, but like all regulatory actions, there'll be a notice posted on our website along with the revised regulation for public comment. So just if you're signed up to our listserv, you will get a notice of that. And you can also just check our regulatory website periodically to see when it has been posted.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, let's go to Lauren Reiser. I have activated your microphone. Lauren, please unmute yourself and you may ask your question.
Hello, this is Lauren Reiser at San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit. And sorry to keep harping on this OAL questions, but so you've talked about the potential for the benchmark CI from the 2024 regulations to be used in Q1, and you talked about the deadlines, but there's also other changes in the new regulations that would impact our credit generation. And so I just wanted to ask if, if the new regulations are adopted for June 1 and you consider the new regulations to be in effect in terms of benchmark CI, would the other changes in the regulation that impact the number of credits we receive also be considered in effect, or would only certain parts of the regulation be considered in effect for Q1?
So I guess all I can say for that is when the regulation goes into effect, there'll be dates identified within the regulation when certain provisions go into effect. We will look at those dates as we are doing our 15-day package to determine if any of those need to move. If they don't, they'll stay the same and they will go into effect as originally prescribed in our amendments. If they do need to change, that'll be posted as part of our 15-day version where you can publicly comment on them. So it's difficult for me to answer that question until we've made decisions about how to move forward with our revisions. But just keep looking at our websites. You'll get notices via the listserv, and that should provide additional information.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Christina Schreiber. Christina, I have activated your microphone. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much. This is Christina Schreiber with Pasadena Water and Power. I have a question about the annual reporting, specifically as programs begin to grow, the narrative section of that report. I was wondering if you might have some tips on the level of detail to include, so as not to make it unnecessarily large, but to keep all the relevant details. Wondering if a streamlined approach is better, or if very specific details are better and expected. So as I mentioned, as programs begin to grow, the narratives become longer and longer. So we were just looking for some general tips on what you expect to see. Thank you.
Yeah, Christina, I suppose you're talking, when you talk about the annual report, do you specifically talking to a field pathway report or project reports?
Project
Or-
reports, like the all proceeds questions, and there's like 6 of them, I believe. And the
Right.
project reports can get very detailed, depending on how much information you include, especially like question 2, where they want it's a breakdown of every project and what you purchased and whatnot. So we're just wondering how much detail is too much or too little, or
Well, from our previous practice, we do expect a more detailed annual report, because that will facilitate the VBs for verification, and also let the staff to have an opportunity to revisit, the initial approval of the project if there's anything changes, especially when we notice that if, for example, if your generated credits is different from the ones that when the project is approved, then rely on those details. Staff may rely on those details to review and the annual report and eventually issue the credits. So I would say, please provide a detailed annual report. That will be our expectation.
Okay, perfect. That's
Thank
very
you.
helpful. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, we have 3 more hands raised. We'll go to Andrew Craig. Andrew, I have activated your microphone. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, great. Yeah, thanks for having this webinar. This has been very informative. I had a question about the margin of safety. We are wrapping up our 2024 AFPRs and getting ready to submit, so we have a lot better idea of where those CIs are coming in and should ultimately get verified at. And, we had to submit the margin of safety for those for Q1 reporting back in the fall of last year. And so I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to update those now to dial in a lot more accurate version of those CIs and margin of safeties now that we have closed out the end of the year, and really we have until the end of Q2 to report on Q1 dispensing. I heard Greg mention that there's a form that could be filled out to update those outside of the system, and it's outside of the AFPR system, but it's really a question kind of going to those the reporting CIs that are starting for dispensing in Q1. So wanted to see, if that was possible.
Yeah, I can take this question. So yeah, we can definitely look into whether margin of safety can be still added for Q1 reporting, whether there is any logistical challenge that would come to us on implementing that request. So we need to look at that more carefully. And so yeah, we'll discuss that internally, and we can get you answer on that. But after Q1, it would be a lot difficult. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can pretty quickly pull that together for you. We had a list late last year, we put together. So if that's something that you could accommodate on your end, we would really appreciate it.
Yeah, welcome.
I was just going to add that similar to the question we previously got. So we'll look into that and try and get some guidance out on if it's possible to adjust the operation or the certified CI.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, we have 1 more hand raised. Joseph Stir, I have activated your microphone. Please.
Great. 2 things. One, I unfortunately didn't get in here, so I missed most of the presentation. Will this be posted somewhere? If not the whole webinar, at least the slides somewhere from this after the meeting?
Yeah, they're going to be posted. The slides and the recording will be posted on the webinar or on the website. So if you go to the main carbon fuel standard websites, look for the meetings tab, I think it's on the left, and it'll take you directly to a list of all the meetings, and this will be right at the top since it's our most recent meeting.
And then second thing, I want to follow up on a question a few years ago on the verification question, because I think Christina wasn't asking about project reports. She was asking about the fuel transaction annual reports where you certify your quarterly transaction reports. And I just want to clarify, I don't think those get verified, correct? It's just the quarterly transaction reports that we verify. Is that accurate? And because I know project reports are something completely different. So I just want to kind of clarify that previous question and see how that works. But I think those annual certifications, I don't think those go through any verification process, correct?
So Scott, do you know what's the annual? Sorry, go ahead.
So the annual compliance report is separate. Yes, it doesn't get verified, but when you go to create your verification report for QFTRs, you're going to the system will automatically generate a file that basically is the annual QFTRs transaction subject to verification. So that's what we are referring to, is that when you create that verification report for QFTRs, that's the annual. It's taking all those annual transactions subject to verification, and that's what's going to be submitted to your VB when you submit it.
Yeah, but we don't verify those questions about where you spend electricity. Like I think those for anyone that does electricity-based transaction reportings, I don't think, to my knowledge, those don't get verified at all. And I think that's what Christina was asking about previously. So I just want to make sure that was clarified from the previous discussion.
So currently, electricity transactions do not get verified. That is correct.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Not at all, but they will be in the future.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's what she was referring to about those like 6 questions, but I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I apologize for misunderstanding her question, but that's what it sounded like she was going with at first. And Christina, if I misunderstood you, I apologize. I just want to, yeah, sometimes I think I may not understand. Sometimes I don't understand as much as I think I understand. So thank you. Okay, that answers my questions. I look forward to seeing the presentations posted. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. We do have Christina with her hand raised. So Christina, I activated your microphone. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. To clarify, I was referring to the annual compliance report. So it's a report called the All Proceeds Report, where you answer questions about your projects. So that's what I was referring to. In terms of the size of that narrative. So that I don't think we were talking about the same thing.
Those are 2 separate things. So that's correct.
Thank you for clarifying, Christina. Okay, we do have one more hand raised. Nadia Denial, I have activated your microphone. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, I'm calling from Jaguar Land Rover. Just a quick question about the fuel pathway. I have been using the same fuel pathway since 2020. Is this something that I need to change now? I'm sorry, I missed that part during the presentation.
Yeah, so I can take that question. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to change your reporting. The CI you are reporting till now. But if you want to change that, you can definitely do that next year for this 2024 verification cycle.
I guess the question, is this necessary, or can I just continue to use the same fuel pathway?
No, you can continue to use the same fuel pathway. Yeah.
Okay. And also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, until next verification cycle, and depending upon what the the reg text says, the revised reg text, that will determine what the outcome would be.
Okay,
So-
and just to, I'm sorry, and I know we've been talking about this often during this meeting, the verification cycle. When can we hear about this? I'm sorry, I know you answered the question before. Just wanted to know when to expect that, and do I need to do anything different than every year until we hear from you guys some sort of update?
So I'm going to say you don't need to change anything for this year, but if the regulation goes into the amended regulation goes into effect in 2026, when you report, you will have to update to the GREET 4.0 model and the tier 1 and 2 calculators and tier 1 and tier 2 calculators associated with GREET 4.0. Is that what you're asking?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so nothing for now. Keep reporting as normal. Keep verifying as normal. Nothing will change this reporting cycle.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem. So it looks like that's all the questions we have. I really want to thank everyone for attending. Hopefully this was useful to all of you. I like the idea of getting to present this information so you guys are prepared. We're going to try and do it a little bit earlier next year. The reg process kind of threw everything for a loop, especially when we heard we were getting the denial. Everything got slowed down a little bit here. So next year, we're probably going to be looking to do this in February. And it's just a reminder to get reporting and give you information on any updates that will occur next year. So I just thank you all and have a good afternoon.